Imagine your birth certificate is trying to get into, like, an exclusive international club.
Oh, I like this analogy already.
Right. So it's all dressed up. It's got the official state seal.
Yeah.
It's ready to mingle on the global stage.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when it gets to the front door of, say, the Italian consulate or maybe a Spanish immigration office, there is a massive bouncer standing there.
And they are not letting just anyone in.
No, they are not. And without a very specific, highly coveted stamp called an apostille, your birth certificate is absolutely not getting past that velvet rope.
It is literally the ultimate bureaucratic VIP pass.
It really is.
Yeah.
And well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a corner of the administrative world that, most people never even think about until they are in an absolute panic.
Which is usually right before a massive deadline.
Always.
Yeah.
You shared a stack of very specific source materials with us today. It's the service and pricing pages from a business called apostillebirthcertificates.com.
Right, which is operated by Neighborhood Parcel out of Tewksbury, Massachusetts.
Yeah, Tewksbury. So the mission for this deep dive is to basically decode the hidden economics of bureaucratic paperwork.
It's a wild world.
It really is.
Hmm.
We are looking at how this specific Massachusetts company uses a radically transparent, all-in pricing model to combat an industry that operates largely in the shadows.
Yeah, an industry that uses some pretty aggressive bait-and-switch fees to exploit consumer desperation.
Totally.
And, we really have to ground this conversation in what these documents actually represent. Because, while the mechanics of paperwork can sound incredibly dry.
Very dry.
Right, but these physical pages are the gatekeepers to people's most significant life transitions.
Like what, specifically?
We're talking about moving abroad for a new job, claiming dual citizenship, retiring on a golden visa somewhere, or even just getting married overseas.
Oh, wow, yeah, big moments.
Massive moments.
Yeah.
And you literally cannot achieve any of those milestones without this authentication.
Okay, let's unpack this right at the foundation. Before we can dissect the wild economics of what companies charge to procure this stamp, we need to understand the mechanics of the stamp itself.
Sure, the nuts and bolts.
Because as I was going through the sources, my immediate reaction was, we live in a highly integrated digital age.
Right.
If I want to verify a financial transaction in Tokyo, it takes, what, 3 seconds?
Yeah, barely even that.
Exactly. So why on earth can't a foreign government just, ping a secure U.S. database to verify a birth certificate? Why are we still relying on a physical piece of paper being shipped around in FedEx envelopes?
What's fascinating here is how international trust actually functions on a geopolitical level.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So an apostille is essentially a government-issued certificate. Usually it's attached by a state's Secretary of State that authenticates a document for legal recognition.
And this is just for certain countries?
Yeah, specifically the 124 countries that are part of the Hague Convention.
Ah, got it.
And this system predates the internet. It dates back to 1961. So the physical nature of it isn't just an accident of history. It's a very deliberate chain of custody.
Right, because a digital database assumes some sort of universal standard of data formatting that simply doesn't exist globally. Or, even domestically.
Exactly. Think about the fragmentation just within the United States alone.
Oh, it's a mess.
It is. You have 50 states and thousands of counties, each with their own unique birth certificate formats, watermarks, local registrar signatures, and data entry systems.
So it's all completely localized.
Exactly. You cannot expect a civil clerk in rural France or a visa officer in Spain to understand the nuances of a birth certificate from Peoria, Illinois, compared to one from Miami-Dade County.
Nor do they want the liability of trying to verify it.
Precisely. They don't want that headache.
So the apostille basically acts as a firewall. The state government steps in and says, we vouch for this local signature. We authenticate this local seal.
Right. The foreign official doesn't need to know the clerk in Peoria. They just need to recognize the standardized Hague apostille issued by the state.
It's basically a universal translator for authenticity.
That's a perfect way to put it. And believe it or not, the Hague apostille is actually the streamlined, highly efficient version of this process.
Wait, really? This is the efficient version?
Oh, yeah. The sources also detail the alternative, which is required for countries that are not part of the Hague Convention.
Or like places like China or the United Arab Emirates.
Exactly. That process is called embassy legalization.
And looking at the mechanics of embassy legalization, it is just a masterclass in redundancy.
It is painful to even read about.
Because non-Hague countries don't recognize that universal translator. You have to climb a much taller ladder of trust. Like, if you need a document legalized for the UAE, you can't just get the state apostille.
No, that would be too easy.
Right. You have to get the local document authenticated by the state first. But then the UAE embassy in Washington, D.C. doesn't deal with individual U.S. states.
Right. They only deal with the federal government.
So what they need the feds to step in.
Precisely. This is the whole concept of sovereign equivalence. The foreign embassy requires the U.S. federal government to vouch for the U.S. state government.
Oh, my gosh. So after the state authentication, the physical document has to be shipped all the way to the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C. for their authentication.
Yep. Another office, another line.
And only after the State Department attaches their seal, the document is finally walked over to the specific foreign embassy for the final legalization stamp.
It's a 3-tiered logistical hurdle for a single piece of paper.
Which naturally creates an immense amount of friction in the system.
Oh, massive friction. And that friction brings us to the human element at the core of these sources.
Right, the people actually going through this.
Because these physical paper stamps are mandatory, and because the process requires navigating these completely opaque state and federal bureaucracies, the people trying to obtain them are almost always operating under intense pressure.
Because you're on a ticking clock, right? Usually tied to some massive financial or personal investment.
Exactly.
The real-world use cases outlined in the sources paint a very clear picture of who is caught in this web. It's international students applying for F1 or J1 visas.
Right. Students who need their credentials authenticated just to enroll in a foreign university before the semester starts. If they miss it, they lose the whole semester.
Or it's Indian-American families applying for overseas citizenship of India, OCI cards for their children.
And professionals navigating corporate relocations. There's a specific client review highlighted in the text from a man named Kevin N. out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Right, Kevin. What was the situation again?
He needed a notarized passport copy authenticated for a job in Dubai.
Oh, wow. Dubai.
Yeah. And when you are in that position, you are negotiating a new salary, figuring out international housing, packing up your entire life, and suddenly, boom.
You hit a wall.
You hit a wall because you have to navigate the UAE's multi-step legalization process.
The personal milestones are really where the pressure seems the most intense. There's a story in the sources about a client named Mia P. from Somerville, and her timeline is just a perfect example of how the system generates total panic.
Her story is incredibly stressful.
It really is. So Mia's wedding in Greece was exactly 6 weeks away.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. The venue is booked, the flights are paid for, the invitations are out. And she discovers she needs something called a single status affidavit.
Which is just a sworn legal statement that she isn't currently married.
Right, but it can't just be signed. It has to be notarized, apostilled by the state, and translated into Greek before the foreign authorities will let her tie the knot.
6 weeks to navigate a government backlog.
It's terrifying.
We also see the sheer volume of paperwork required in cases like Angela L. from Providence. She was applying for Italian dual citizenship.
Oh, Italian consulates are notoriously uncompromising about their requirements.
Uncompromising is a polite word for it. She needed 3 separate vital records coordinated, apostilled, and shipped together to Rome.
3 of them.
3. And if one document is missing the stamp, the entire application is rejected. And you go to the back of a line that can literally take years to clear.
Years. Looking at these stories, my immediate thought is that this level of desperation is an absolute gold mine for predatory pricing.
Oh, it's the perfect storm.
You have highly anxious consumers, hard deadlines, complex state-by-state rules, and this unyielding requirement for a physical government stamp.
Yeah.
I mean, the behavioral economics here dictate that when a consumer is in a panic state, their cognitive load is basically maxed out.
They aren't going to read the fine print.
Exactly. They just want the problem to go away.
That is the exact vulnerability the broader apostille industry exploits. And, well, it's where we transition into the deceptive math detailed in the sources.
Let's get into the math.
So the product that a company like ApostilleBirthCertificates.com is selling isn't actually a stamp.
Right, because the state government issues the stamp.
Exactly. What the business is selling is risk mitigation. They are selling error prevention and time management.
That makes sense.
But because the consumer just wants a quick fix, budget competitors use a strategy called drip pricing.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The sources break down the deceptive math of the budget apostille industry, and it mirrors the budget airline industry perfectly.
It's the exact same playbook.
When you book a cheap flight, you see a $40 ticket, and you think, wow, I've outsmarted the system. But the airline knows they have you captive. So when you get to the airport, you're charged to print the boarding pass, you're charged for a carry-on, you're charged to pick a seat.
It's the exact same psychological trap. A typical budget online service in this space will advertise a highly visible base fee of, say, $89.
$89 sounds great.
Right. For someone like Mia, whose brain is totally overloaded with Greek wedding logistics, $89 offers a mental heuristic. It looks like a cheap, easy way to cross a stressful task off her list.
She anchors to that number.
Exactly, she anchors to it.
But the base fee is a complete illusion. When you actually get to the checkout page, the drip pricing begins.
Step by step.
First, the budget site adds the state fee back onto the bill. In Massachusetts, the Secretary of State Apostille fee is $6, so the $89 becomes $95.
Then the arbitrary fees appear. A processing and handling surcharge is suddenly tacked on, often around $20.
Sneaky. So now the total is $115.
And the most egregious part is that you still don't have your document back.
Oh, right. You have to pay for the return shipping. The budget site adds USPS priority shipping for another $15.
Yeah.
So the $89 bargain, which hooked the panicked consumer in the first place, quietly balloons into a real total of $130 to over $165.
And the sources are careful to point out that it isn't just the bottom-tier budget sites pulling this trick.
No.
No, the big national Apostille companies operate on a very similar drip pricing model. They might advertise a starting professional service fee of $175.
Which is already high.
Right, but they still strip out the state fee and the return shipping from that advertised price, meaning the consumer ends up paying well over $200 by the time their credit card is actually charged.
Wow. Which brings us to the counter strategy employed by apostillebirthcertificates.com.
Right, the neighborhood parcel team.
Yeah. So they operate out of a physical brick-and-mortar office in Tewksbury, Massachusetts, specifically 1215 Main Street. And their entire business model over the last 15 years has been built on this concept of all-in pricing.
It's very straightforward.
Their economy tier is priced at exactly $149.95.
To understand why that flat rate is actually disruptive, we have to look at the mechanics of what it covers.
Yeah.
Because it addresses literally every hidden fee we just discussed.
Okay, break it down for me.
So that one, $49.95, includes the $6 Massachusetts state fee. It includes a dedicated named case manager.
Oh, that's huge. That prevents the customer from getting lost in some generic support ticket system.
Exactly. It also includes a 24/7 tracking portal, which directly mitigates the anxiety of wondering where your birth certificate is.
Yeah, that peace of mind is big.
And crucially, it includes domestic return shipping via USPS first-class mail.
Which means the consumer is actually paying $43 to $53 less than the national standard by simply sidestepping the bait-and-switch checkout fees.
Yeah, the math works out in the consumer's favor.
But you know, the most vital inclusion in that $149 price point seems to be the free document audit before they even submit the paperwork to the state.
Oh, that audit is critical.
Because a rejected document resets the clock, right?
Exactly. You have to understand how rigid the Secretary of State's office is. They are not verifying the accuracy of the facts on your birth certificate. They are only verifying the signature and the seal of the local official against a master state registry.
So if there's any discrepancy,
If your original document has a smudged seal, or if it was signed by an unauthorized local registrar, the state will outright reject it.
just bounce it right back.
Instantly.
And if you're using a generic budget site that just acts as a mail forwarder, they don't check for those errors.
No, they don't care.
You won't find out there's a problem until the state government mails the rejected document back to you weeks later, which completely destroys your timeline.
Right. So the Tewksbury team's document audit is basically a pre-screening mechanism to catch those exact structural flaws before the document ever enters the government queue.
That's incredibly smart. It points to a very deliberate, long-term business strategy.
It does. By saving the consumer money up front and refusing to nickel and dime them at checkout, they build verifiable trust.
And the sources highlight that they maintain a 5.0 rating across 47 verified Google reviews.
That's hard to do.
It is. And they've processed over 1,156 documents without losing a single one.
In an industry dealing with sensitive personal data, A pristine reputation and word-of-mouth referrals are infinitely more valuable.
And generate far more sustainable revenue.
Exactly, far more sustainable than squeezing a quick $20 handling fee out of a panicked client.
So transparency is clearly an excellent model for the standard timeline. The sources state the economy tier takes about 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
But what happens when the timeline collapses? Let's analyze their rush all-in tier.
This is where things get intense.
Yeah, because it is priced at $375 for a 2 to 3 business day turnaround. Now, if I look at a $375 fee for a $6 state stamp, my initial reaction is massive sticker shock.
Sure.
Wait, $375 for a $6 stamp still feels incredibly steep? Are they just putting a massive markup on the panic we discussed earlier?
It does feel that way until you break down the physical logistics of what is actually being purchased.
Okay, walk me through it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of sovereign bureaucracy, you realize you aren't paying for the state stamp. You are paying for a highly orchestrated physical intervention to bypass the standard mail queue.
Right, you are basically buying back a week of your own life.
Exactly. Because the neighborhood parcel office is in Tewksbury, they are roughly a 20-minute drive from the Secretary of State's office in Boston.
Oh, so they are physically close to the hub.
Very close. When you purchase that $375 rush tier, you are paying for a human being to physically take your document, navigate Boston traffic, walk into the government building, hand-deliver your paperwork to the civil clerk, and wait in the physical line on your behalf.
Wow. You are literally renting their geographic proximity and their human labor.
That's exactly it. And for states like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Connecticut, deploying a human courier allows them to secure same-day processing at the state level.
Same day. That's huge.
Yeah. They take that newly stamped document from the clerk and immediately place it into a FedEx overnight envelope.
Which fundamentally changes the math. Because FedEx overnight shipping is, what, a $35 value at minimum?
At least, yeah.
And that is fully baked into the $300 to $75 price. So combine that with the physical labor, the transportation costs, and being bumped to the front of the company's internal priority queue, and it becomes a concierge logistics service rather than just a document fee.
And the sources are also very explicit about the refund policy on this tier, which reveals an important reality about this whole industry.
What's the policy?
The fees are non-refundable once processing begins, even if the government agency delays the process.
Oof. Which sounds harsh, but it perfectly illustrates the limits of private enterprise when interfacing with the government.
Right. They aren't magicians.
Right. The company can guarantee the physical logistics. They can guarantee the drive to Boston, standing in the line and overnighting the result. But they cannot force a state government official to work faster.
No one can.
If there's a backlog at the State House or a localized issue, the private courier still expended the labor and the transportation. You are paying for the expedited attempt, regardless of the state's internal weather.
It's also worth noting how they scale this model for complex cases.
Like what?
Like if a client has multiple documents, they don't just blindly multiply the flat fee. The sources mention a client named Arjun S. from Fremont, California.
Okay.
He was applying for OCI cards for his 2 kids and needed both birth certificates apostilled. In scenarios like that, clients can call, explain they have a stack of documents going to the same state office, and receive a comprehensive, bundled, all-in quote.
That's actually really helpful. They also address the international friction point too, right?
Yes.
If you already live abroad, say you're in Rome, or you need the paperwork routed directly to an immigration attorney in Lisbon, they utilize FedEx International or UPS Worldwide.
Which is obviously more expensive.
Right. That is quoted separately as an add-on, naturally. But the defining feature remains intact. They quote, the exact cost before you pay. There is no bill shock in the back end.
None. And they will even procure the original document for you.
Wait, really?
Yeah. If a client realizes they don't actually possess a certified copy of their birth certificate to begin with, the company will order it directly from the state vital records office for an additional $30 to $50.
Wow.
Yeah, they bundle the procurement right into the Apostille pipeline. It is essentially an end-to-end service designed entirely around removing administrative friction.
It's just a masterclass in how a small business can thrive by solving a very specific, high-stress problem with absolute transparency.
Yeah.
I mean, they aren't trying to be an automated software company.
No, not at all.
They are embracing the physical, analog nature of the problem and just being the most reliable entity in a very murky space.
And, that brings us to the broader application of this knowledge.
Yeah, why does this matter to the average person?
Exactly. Why should a listener care about the intricacies of the Apostille market, especially if they aren't currently applying for Italian dual citizenship or planning an overseas wedding?
Because understanding the mechanics of drip pricing versus all-in economic models makes you a much sharper, more resilient consumer across the board.
Absolutely.
The strategy of baiting a consumer with an artificially low base price and bleeding them with hidden fees at checkout is everywhere. It's in the airline industry, it's in event ticketing, it's in complex insurance claims, and it's in software subscriptions.
It really is everywhere. Recognizing how cognitive load and stress make you vulnerable to these tactics is half the battle.
Yeah.
When to look past the from $89 banner and ask the structural questions like, does this include the mandated state fees? Does this cover return shipping? Is there a processing surcharge?
Right.
When you ask those things, you protect your wallet and your sanity. If a company requires you to dig through terms and conditions to find the actual price, you know exactly what behavioral game they are playing.
And when you are dealing with documents that hold the keys to your life's next chapter, playing behavioral games is the last thing you want to engage in.
Absolutely. You want clarity and you want certainty.
So what does this all mean? I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We just spent this entire deep dive mapping out the realities of FedEx envelopes, physical drives to Boston, wet ink signatures, and embossed state seals.
It's a paper.
So much paper. We have 124 countries operating under the Hague Convention, currently relying on human couriers driving physical paper documents to government offices just to get an ink stamp of authenticity.
It is a remarkably analog system persisting in a completely digital century.
Exactly. And the question is, how much longer can this physical infrastructure possibly last?
Good question.
In an increasingly globalized world, where we can transfer millions of dollars internationally in milliseconds using cryptographic verification, will a decentralized digital ledger, or maybe a blockchain system, eventually render this entire physical apostille industry obsolete?
It makes you wonder.
Or is there a deeply rooted psychological power to a physical seal? The actual tangible weight of the paper and the raised bump of a state emblem that sovereign governments and international bureaucrats will simply never let go of.
It raises a profound question about the architecture of human trust. I mean, when the stakes are at their highest, do our institutions trust the math of an algorithm, or do they still require the physical artifact?
Given the state of global bureaucracy, I have a feeling the physical artifact is going to reign supreme for quite a while longer.
I wouldn't bet against the paperwork.
Definitely not. Until the world goes entirely digital, if your birth certificate wants to get past that international bouncer and into the club, you are going to have to wait in line at the velvet rope for that physical stamp. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you on the next one.